Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of In the Prog Seat. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy November 1st, or maybe for some of you, it's already November 2nd, or maybe it's still the 31st of October. I don't know. It depends on where you are in the world. We've arrived at the letter M once again as we're going through the alphabet between now and the end of the year. We have each picked our favorite three bands that start with M. We each have some honorable mentions. So we're going to go one by one. Let me introduce the crew here. We get all the way from Scotland. It's actually an hour earlier by him now, so we can keep him extra late tonight. We got Stephen Reed in the house. We got one half of the Chicago connection, Louis Nasser. The other half is George Lemay. Our center square, once again, Eric Porter. Our oftentimes center square is Chuck Alvarez. And the one guy we need to get off this show as quickly as possible because he's got to watch the Phillies in the World Series, Chad Hutchinson. And of course, the professor of prog, Ken Golden. Greetings, gentlemen.
Good evening.
You ready to get started with them?
Yes, we are.
Stephen looks more alert.
Yes. Hey, it's an hour earlier by him.
I look more alert because, spoilers everybody, because this is the wonders of recording this. I was late because our clocks changed, so I'm early.
Ooh. Call Doc Brown for that one.
We had to go grab him from listening to Leonard Skinner, which he's been doing all day, because of course, spoiler alert, that's what we're going to be talking about in the UK Connection this Saturday. So yeah. So
Never
Stephen,
break the
kick us
fourth
off
wall,
here.
Stephen. Never
Number
break the
three.
fourth wall.
Stephen, you can kickstart us off here today.
Okay. So my number three, whatever we want to put it, here we go. Max Webster.
Max Webster.
Yeah. So a band that should have been much bigger than they were, really. I've gone for A Million Vacations. Could have gone for High Class and Borrowed Shoes, but I mean, their previous albums at this stage has had, Terry Brown of Rush fame doing the production. I love the sound on this. I just think it's great. I mean, the main focus of the band was obviously Kim Mitchell, guitar player, great vocalist. On A Million Vacations, the keyboard work of Terry Watkinson kind of comes to the fore a bit. He also sings on a couple of songs. And I think that the common conception is that Max Webster were neither one thing nor another. And that was kind of their problem. They were varied and a little bit quirky. They're not quite hard rock. They're not quite prog. They're not quite anything, but they're also a little bit of everything. I would certainly suggest that they were progressive. And that goes from album to album. It even goes on song to song. There's kind of no two songs kind of sound alike as you go through certain albums. I really like that because there's still a cohesion about it all. But really, I think with hindsight, it maybe would have been more of a surprise if they had been huge, because it's just a little too confusing to take it beyond being fantastic if you like this kind of thing. And I like this kind of thing. So yeah, my first choice is Max Webster.
Great choice. And the album too. I agree with you.
Yep. That's great.
I liked his picks better when he was sleepy.
I'll be fine by the end of the show then, Ken.
All right.
Great singer too, Stephen. I love his voice.
Yeah, really good. Just underrated in all departments, I think.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Louis.
Okay, so I found the letter M to be very, very difficult. And I made a decision early on that I wasn't gonna just call out obvious choices, because one of the things that really I loved about the program when I started watching it was that I learned about albums that I wouldn't normally even know existed. So with that in mind, these are albums that I genuinely love and that I think probably people don't often hear. And my number three is an album that is fairly recent. I got this copy during the pandemic. Many people probably know Matthias Olsson.
Mm-hmm.
This is not M for Matthias. This is M for Molsum. Molsum is the band that he goes by when he does solo work. And this album in particular, he's done, I don't know, this guy makes an album a year and he's been doing that for years. So if you want to buy all the Molsum records, that's a job. But this one in particular, Molsum, Tom and Tiger, is a really, really beautiful and emotive record. For people who don't know, Tiger is Matthias's eldest daughter. And Tom is a friend that he passed away not too long ago. He was from the group Cathedral. And they were working on an album, Matthias and Tom. And so this record deals with that whole transition, things that were happening at the time with Tom and Matthias, and then also with Tiger, who now has a budding career as a singer, songwriter. If you like mellotrons, if you like atmospherics, if you like electronic music, but very proggy bedrock, this is a great record. I really, really love it. It's not, people don't often talk about it, but I think it deserves a shout out for sure. So Molson, Tom and Tiger. It's not a happy record, but it's not intended to be a happy record. It's a pretty heavy listen, but it's beautiful.
It's a lot of great music that's not happy.
The same.
Beauty of music. Yep. George.
Number 3 is from Georgia, Mastodon. 8 albums. One of the few progressive bands that has actually made some inroads commercially. Made even more odd probably by the fact that they're also very heavy in comparison to what's commercial. And they go with intentionally sludgy production slant. The records are not pristine, but it's part of their identity, I think. And also drummer Brand Daler, spastic, constant, tons of fills. I mean, drummers, you definitely, if you haven't heard Mastodon, you got to be on this band. He's very entertaining. They have 3 lead vocalists. None of them are Pavarotti, trust me, but they get the point across. They fit the music. This, for me, is where I came in and still my favorite, but
I picked the right album.
yeah, the records are very consistent. So Mastodon.
Saw them on that tour. They were unbelievable.
Yep.
Crack the Sky is so good. They've got like 4 albums in a row, 3 genuine classics, and then a whole bunch of other really, really good albums. I think they've only made 1 subpar album to me, which was The Hunter, which is good, not the best. Great band. Eric.
Well, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I also found M difficult in terms of what I was going to put in my top 3 and what I was going to have for honorable mentions. And Stephen just got me because I completely forgot about Max Webster. So now I'm frazzled. But my number 3 will take the Chicago duo of George and Lewis, and I'm going with Marvin. And this is their latest, Dirty Horse. And I saw them live before I actually owned anything by them. I saw them in a small club in Albany, and they probably had 50 people there, but they played their asses off. Unbelievable. Sax, guitar. We had an interview with Danny Rabin a while back. He's always doing videos, Facebook and otherwise, guitar lessons and things like that. Really creative guy, I think. I really enjoy watching his stuff, but these guys are intense, kind of balls to the wall, fusion, rock. There's a whole bunch of stuff. He's a great guitar player, but the whole band is absolutely fantastic. And hope to get to see them again. Seems like they tour constantly or try to tour constantly. So check them out. And if you've never heard them, this is a band you have to see live. And I think when you see them live, they'll click for you. So that is number 3, Marvin.
Did they do story time?
I don't know, Lewis. When I saw them,
I don't mean a song, like they tell stories. They set up the show and tell a story.
There was definitely
Yeah,
a lot of that in the set. Yeah, definitely a lot of talking.
They're great. The 2 Israeli guys who came to the States, and they're one of the hardest working bands I know. I love them. I love them.
Yeah, no, it sounds like they'll play anywhere too, right? I mean, they're putting stuff out on Facebook that's like, hey, we're going to be coming through Kentucky and Tennessee. Give us a name of a place and we'll try to play there. I mean, sounds like they do as much as possible.
Oh, yeah.
How about a potential rib fest at Ken's house?
Will they play in my backyard?
They will, I'll bet.
As long as you feed them, Ken, they'll, you know.
You have to hear their stories first, Ken.
We'll think about it.
Chuck.
All right. Once again, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, all. My number 3, I've already picked this album. Actually, no, I think I've only picked this album once in all the times that we've done this show. My number 3 is the Mars Volta, the Lost Comatorium. That's my number 3. What's it? As I mentioned many times and so, how much I have a dislike for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but you can't deny that that the musicians in the band aren't great, man. Flea is one of the bassists on this album, and he kills on there. And Frusciante is a great guitarist as well. This the band's debut album, and they just kill on this album. That's my number 3, the Mars Volta.
All right.
One of the few bands I walked out on.
Really?
Oh man.
Well, I like I do like their albums, but when I saw them live, it was like an assault on the audience.
Yeah.
It's
So I
chaotic.
thought about their albums. I bought the first 2 and never listened to them. I got rid of them. I couldn't take
The albums were interesting, but live, man, it was chaos. It was like chaos on stage.
When I saw them, they were the headliners playing in an arena, and the openers were System of a Down. No, the other way around. They opened System of a Down.
When I saw them, they were the headliner, and
They were great. They were incredible. Absolutely incredible. Flawless execution. They were, to me, the singer is like a Mexican James Brown. It's like this very weird. I don't know. I just think they're brilliant. They're brilliant, and I love them. So great.
Same here.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Chad.
All right, I'm going to get one of the obvious ones out of the way. And that would be Mahavishnu. I'm going to go with Intermounting Flame. You know, one of the classic fusion bands of the 70s. I could not pick them. So we've talked about them many times. Mahavishnu Orchestra, number 3.
All right. Ken.
Okay, so as Lewis said, M was tough. It was a profoundly deep letter. So as I mentioned before we started recording, I mentioned to the guys, I just started slashing bands right and left. I made up some rules, no repeats from previous shows, no one-of-a-kind bands, and I pared it down. It's still a ridiculously long list. My first band, these guys were really good at Nearfest, and La Maschera di Sera from Italy. For me, they are the best of what people call RPI bands, rock progressivo italiano. Started by Fabio Zuffanti, bass player. He's got a whole bunch of different bands, Finisterre, Hosonauten, and some others. But for my money, La Maschera di Sera is the best one. It's kind of the slavish recreation of the 70s Italian prog sound. This one, SEI, was their 2020 album. Just 3 long tracks, lots of mellotron, Hammond organ, a lot of flute, very, very solid vocals. Back in '73, they did something that was kind of crazy. They wrote and recorded a sequel to Leorme's Filoni Serona.
Nice.
They even used the original cover artist, Lanfranco Frigeri. So it's, yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for a new album. I think these guys are just an absolute pleasure. They haven't made a bad album. I just wish they were all on vinyl. They're not all on vinyl. The early ones.
When that came out, they offered that up online for like cents. I mean, it was like a $5 download for the whole album.
Yeah, it was like
It may have been less. It was crazy.
I when I made the list, they actually were like in my honorable mentions, and I wound up swapping them out with another band this afternoon because I revisited it. And I'm like, man, these guys are great. And
Band.
yeah, I don't think they've made a bad album. That's my number 3, La Maschera di Sera.
All right, so I was telling the guys before we started taping that I made a switch on my number 3, like literally 2 minutes before we all jumped on the Zoom. I had a Norwegian band in my number 3 who I love a lot. And then the more I looked at my list of honorable mentions and I kept staring at this one band, and I'm like, the reason why I put them in my honorable mentions because of something that Steven said a little while ago is you can't really kind of put them in any kind of category. But the more I thought about it, I was like, fuck it, Max Webster is in my top 3. high class and borrowed shoes. There's enough prog in their music to have them be here. Yeah, they're hard rock, they're prog, they're pop, they're kind of quirky, whatever. I don't know. I just think that their music is just so out in left field that it's progressive in every way possible. And I love these guys. I love Kim Mitchell. I think he's like one of those kind of genius musician guys, great singer, amazing guitar player, great writer. To me, he's kind of like Canada's answer to Frank Zappa, but maybe not quite on that level, but kind of that's the way his mind works. So yeah, Max Webster, number 3. Sorry, Magic Pie, I love you, but I had to bump you.
I thought it was going to be Moose Loose.
Who?
Moose Loose.
Moose Loose? No,
Yeah.
not quite.
It's like the Hunchback Floyd. Only the
Floyd Hunchback pick, but don't disrespect the Floyd Hunchback group.
Yeah.
All right, Stephen, back to you.
My number 2 is the Welsh outfit Magenta.
Mm.
Debuted in 2001, and they've been remarkably consistent ever since. And remarkably prodigious as well. There's so many albums, so many studio albums, so many live albums. It's just been constant in a very good way. Bass round keyboard player and composer Rob Reed, and he's got a great solo catalogue. He's in Chimpan A, he does Cyan, he does Compendium, does everything. And then there's the vocals from Christina Booth. And the band has been mostly completed in recent times by Chris Fry on bass, Dan Nelson on drums, and Jeffy Griffiths. I'm getting this all wrong tonight. Wow.
We should have gone on later. Stephen can't do the prog seat unless it's after midnight.
Chris Fry plays guitars, Dan Nelson plays bass, and Jeffy Griffiths plays drums. Wow, okay. Anyway, I think I'm that confused because the most recent album, which I'm not holding up here, has none of that on it. Anybody's heard the brand new album, there are no electric guitars, there are no keyboards, there are no bass. It's a classical piece. It's got a kind of strings and classical guitar. I'm still getting my head around it. It's totally different. But anyway, for the large part, Magenta have been prime exponents of kind of current UK symphonic prog revival. And I just think that they've been fantastic. Really like them. This is Master of Illusion from 2020. I keep going back to this album. It's just got great atmosphere, great feel, and I love it a lot, even though I've talked an utter load of rubbish about this band. This is Magenta. This is my number 2.
Tina is a lovely human being. And so is her husband, Mike. Very nice people.
New album is out.
Yes.
It's called The White Witch.
Yep.
And in transit to us.
It's very interesting. As I say, I'm still getting my head around it because it's completely different. If you listen to it without the name on the front, would I even connect it with being Magenta? Not yet. The vocals are unmistakable. Beyond that, it's completely different. It's a very brave move. And considering how many projects Rob Reed has, having the name on the front, not sure. Not sure yet. Early days. It's good though, but it's early days.
Coincidentally, Magenta and La Machera de Serra were both at the same Nearfest, 2007.
Truth.
All right. Lewis.
All right. Well, this is pretty hard to do, but I guess I'm gonna have to pick one that I've had a longer history with, even though there's one I really like at number 2 that is much newer. And I'm gonna pick Mirthcon Vehicle.
Interesting.
For my number 2. This album is an absolute smoker. Everybody on this just plays their ass off. And it is, like most alt rock albums that you get, they have a certain edge to them. They're quirky, they're a little strange. I would, if you can get your hand on this, please, do not hesitate. It has also, it has lots of talented players. Jamison Smelts on saxophones, so many great people, right? And this is really one of my favorite records. I love this thing so much. Right?
The only thing I have by
I don't even want to describe it because I don't know how I would describe it. It's angular without being dissonant for the sake of dissonance. It rocks, it melts your face, but at the same time, it has really, really, really clever intellectual bits to it. I don't know, it has it all. This record really has it all for me. So I love this band, Mirthcon and Vehicle in particular. It begins with what seems to be a commercial for a car. And man, that commercial takes a twist into the weird, and then it's just straight off into the bizarre world. And it's a fucking thing of beauty. So Mirthcon, Vehicle.
The only thing I have by them is their EP, The Illusion of Joy.
Yeah, this is not as good as this one, but it's also quite good. This is amazing. I think they broke up. I don't think I was gonna see them play live with another band that my honorable mention is Motar.
Oh yeah.
But the main guy in Mirthcon had some kind of kidney stone the night they were in Chicago. So they had to cancel. And then they broke up. They were playing in some, fucking attic somewhere, obviously, because these guys are not drawing in a big theater. It was incredible. And that was my one and only chance to see them because they're a West Coast band. And they were doing one of their rare tours. So, yeah, Mirthcon.
Ryan Scow goes to see bands in Chinese restaurants in New York City, and Lewis goes to see bands in attics in Chicago. See that?
Oh, yeah, attics, basements. I go anywhere. It doesn't matter. If the band is good, I'm fucking there.
There you go. That's the attitude.
That's right. So,
George, what do you got? Number 2.
Number 2 is Fernando Molinari,
yes.
jazz rock bass player out of Brazil, recently relocated to the States. He's a fusion guy that doesn't forget that you should rock too. It shouldn't be boring. There are no boring songs on any of the 3 albums. He's got good technique, but he's not in your face about it. Everything's about songs. He picks good players around him. If you have any predilection to getting into some instrumental music, this is one of the guys you got to check out.
Yeah.
All right.
Smoking album.
Yep.
Noted.
Fernando, parabéns, Brazil, Lula.
You got any copies left, Ken?
I don't think so. I think we sold that recently. Where did he relocate to?
Atlanta, I think, right? Yeah.
I need to touch base.
Eric, back to you.
My number 2, I picked kind of like what Lewis had just said with his pick. I have a long history I'm still a struggling guitar player, but as a struggling guitar player in high school, I used to get Guitar Player magazine, and they used to have little plastic 45s that would
Flexi disc.
Yes, plexi discs.
Flexi.
When I heard Steve Morse, I was absolutely blown away. This is the first thing I ever bought by him. It's still my favorite. I love Jerry Peak. No disrespect to Dave LaRue, but I absolutely love Jerry Peak's playing on this. I'm hoping with his departure from Deep Purple that at some point this band will be back together. I don't know what his plans are, but hopefully he will be back to making music, whether solo or we're getting the Steve Morse band back together. But this to me is absolutely smoke. I love it. I like most of his stuff. I know he's had some other, I think, like Coast to Coast, he played a half Watson, so he's had guests on his albums as well.
Southern Steel is a killer for me.
Southern Steel as well. But I love Steve Morse, consummate musician, and by all accounts, great guy. So support this guy. Go out and buy some Steve Morse.
I kind of thought he ran out of ideas a little bit those last couple of Steve Morse band albums. So for me, I was kind of like hoping he would go back and do some Dregs stuff because it's been a long time since we had a Dregs album.
I'll take Dregs too. No problem there.
But yeah, the introduction is terrific. I love the introduction and Coast to Coast and Southern Steel, and those are to me his 3 best by far. So, guys, amazing, a legend. Chuck.
All right, my number 2 is another favorite band of mine, Mr. Bungle, their debut album. You know, what's that? Unlike the first two, I mean, unlike the second and third album, this one is all over the place. It's a creepy album. You know, it's not for everyone, but you know, these guys, it's not. I just laugh at it because you know you listen to this album and you find yourself laughing more than you do enjoying it if you're a neophyte to the band. But just an amazing band. You know, great bass player, amazing drummer. You know, what's Mike Patton? We already know about how Mike Patton is, how talented he is. Just a great band, man, and that's my number 2, the debut album from Mr. Bungle.
That's a
George
great.
and I had a conversation a couple months ago. We were talking on instant message, and I don't know, they came up, and George is like, "Oh, did you ever get into them back in the day?" I'm like, "Man, you know, I tried because I really like Patton, but man, that Mr. Bungle stuff kind of like went right over my head." I said, "But I haven't listened to it in like a million years. I'm going to go out and listen to that particular album." I said, "I'm like, let me go out and listen to that again." And I went and listened to it, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still not getting Mr. Bungle."
Have you ever listened, Pete, to an album by them called California?
Beautiful album.
No.
That
Probably
may
the
be
most
a better entry point.
Yeah.
This is too hostile.
Mm-hmm.
And I like hostile music, but it's just like
No. But what I mean to say is that it's not hostile like Nile or something like that. It's hostile just in the statistical density of ideas.
it's all over the place. Yeah.
And whereas California is a little more subdued, it's still them. It's still crazy as fuck, but it has enough beauty that your brain can sort of absorb it better. I think. I don't know if Chuck would agree, but I love California. That's the album I always tell people. If you didn't listen to Bungle.
Mm-hmm. California is most definitely the album that is the album from Mr. Bungle that most people would get into. Their second album is even further.
Yes,
it's that album is extremely chaotic. You know, you listen to that, you're like, all right.
So Pete, in your M Hall of Shame, who's worse, Mr. Bungle or Magma?
Oh man,
that would be one hell of a concert.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a double bill.
That would be one for the ages.
Like Patton's maniacal shrieking versus Cobain nonsense. Yeah, I don't know.
Dude, I'm telling you, that would be. I saw Patton open for Tool with Tomahawk, and I've never seen somebody absorb the hatred of an arena quite like him. He loved all the hate he got, and he just amplified it. He was standing there dressed like a cop, waving his baton like a dick, and playing with a puppet, making everybody hate him, and it was a thing of beauty. So I'm just saying, Patton.
Totally see him doing that too.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right, where are we, Chad?
I don't know if I want to follow that.
Again.
Seriously, not my thing. Okay. I'm gonna bring it back down a little bit, and I'm gonna go with the genius of Morgable. They had to be in my top 3. Had to be. With Christophe Godin, one of the best guitar players on the planet. I could have picked Jazz for the Deaf. I could have picked Grotesque. I could have picked the second album. They're prolific. Christophe, all 3 of them are great to watch live. And, you know, Arl's not on this one. He came in after this album on drums, but him and Yvonne and Christophe are just amazing on stage. Their musicianship is through the roof. They bring the humor. They're just endlessly entertaining on stage, and their music, like I said, their musicianship is astronomical. They're such a pleasure to watch live, and they're such sweet guys. Every time I hear they're coming over here, or Ken says they're putting out a new album, I get excited. So Morgable by far, number 2.
Cool. Ken.
My number 2 went with a German band, put out a series of really good albums in the 70s, Mrs. Beastly. And I don't know if you guys are hip to Mrs. Beastly. Really, I'm a little surprised. German jazz rock band, very creative, not much in the way of guitar, Eric, be warned. A lot of keyboards, kind of reminds me of Nucleus a bit. They have a kinship with Embryo. In fact, So the guys have guested Roman Bunker, the guitar player from Embryo, who's played on their albums. A lot of flute and sax, trading off with keyboards. There's violin. They went through a number of changes, and eventually they got rid of the guitar completely. But really, one of the great jazz rock bands from Germany. Germany actually in the 70s had a lot of jazz rock bands, and for my money, Mrs. Beasley might have well been the best of them all.
That's one hell of a cover. It looks like it's right off of Saturday morning cartoons.
It actually kind of it's got a little touch of Neil Adams to it. So let's see.
Oh, it does, yeah.
Was it
Was it drawn by him, actually?
No, I don't think so. It's got the look, but I don't think it's Neil Adams. Neil Adams did a
collection.
Neil Adams did a cover for the Groundhogs.
Yes.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
Do you think that's a Frank Bruno cover then?
I don't know. I'll dig through and see if I could. It's hard to read. The text is like color top of. It's hard to read. Anyway, Mrs. Beasley, they had a number of albums, all very, very good. If you like Embryo and like things like Soft Machine, Nucleus, I think you dig these guys. And this one, Space Gorilla, maybe it's got a little touch of funk in it here and there. Good stuff. It's my number 2, Mrs. Beasley.
Interesting.
I told you I didn't want to have the same old bands. I wanted to mix it up and pull out some different stuff.
I hear it. Well, I had to pick this band for my number 2. I think we'll probably see them a couple more times here tonight. Marillion, Clutching at Straws. You know, we've talked about them a bit on the show in the past. One of my favorite albums from the 80s, you know, of a prog album in the 80s, the last with Mr. Fesh, Derek Dick. Did I say that okay, Stephen?
That's not bad.
Not bad. Yeah, and they've had some really good albums with Steve Hogarth as well. But to me, I have some pretty cool, like more obscure stuff in my honorable mentions, but I went with kind of my gut on at least my top 2. Number 3, like I said before, kind of moved around a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Marillion. Back to Stephen.
Well, before I reveal the shock of who my number 1 is, I'm actually saying George has given me some fantastic homework that he hasn't really realised here, because it only clicked a couple of weeks ago and it's really clicked tonight that I need to go back to the letter A, and I need to work out what shirt you've been wearing every week, George, because I've only realised the sideways connection that is going on here. So yeah, I'm impressed. That's another great one tonight, by the way. But yeah, for everybody else that's watching, if they haven't sussed it, go back to A and work your way through. I picked it up 2 weeks ago. Okay. Saying no more. Right, so I did actually ask Ken for the keys to the Hall of Fame this week, but I couldn't get through the electrified fences. I couldn't fight off the guard dogs. He just would not let me in. There was a moat, everything. So yeah, my number 1 is Marillion. I've running late. I've picked up the wrong album. This is Season's End. It's brilliant, by the way. It's meant to be Clutching at Straws. Thank you, Pete. And I've picked up Brave. So there's meant to be a Fish album here and a Hogarth album. It's not going well for me tonight at all. But there you go. So yeah, it's Marillion. They are probably the most important band in my prog journey. They were my way in. They have influenced, I would suggest, most of what I've listened to prog-wise since. Yes, there's been some ups and downs. Yes, they're not for everybody, it would appear. There are probably 3 camps. There are the people that can't see past the first 4 albums. There are the people that have gotten into them since and really don't understand the Fish years. And there are people like me who got into them when Fish was in the band, still gets into them now. I think that their newest album is one of the best things that's been released this year. So yeah, my number 1, no shocks, no surprises, it's Marillion.
Stephen, the heart wants what the heart wants.
Absolutely, yes indeed.
Ken wants pizza.
I want that pizza he's been eating in Bordentown.
I'm going to Palermo
down,
on my next trip east. I'm going to eat that pie.
Well, that's what we got to do.
And it's not an innuendo. I'm not. It's a fucking tomato pie. Get your heads out of the gutter.
We'll go to Bordentown and we'll hook up in Bordentown.
Yes.
Palermo's. If anybody's ordered Palermo's in Bordentown, man.
Gonna happen. We should have a pizza party here on In the Prog Seat one night. Everybody get pie from your local place.
I'll bring Pequods.
Oh, Pequods.
And I can have New Yorkers bitch at me, telling me it's not pizza while I eat it and laugh in their face.
George will bring that stuff, that casserole looking stuff.
Well, if I have to bring pie from my local place, it'll be a Scotch pie. We don't call pizza pie. It's not a pie. Pie's got mutton in it.
I would like to take a rare exception to correct you, Stephen. You've never been to Chicago. This is a fucking pie.
No, it's not. A pie. You don't understand. A pie's got crust all the way around and on top. Otherwise, it's not.
I am telling you, you have not had Giordano's. It's a fucking pie.
No,
it's a gigantic casserole.
It's like a casserole, Stephen.
And bread.
It's a casserole then. If it's like a casserole, it's a casserole. That's why they call it a casserole.
It's not a casserole, it's a fucking pie with sauce on top.
You can fuck your... Anyway, let's not go there. Okay.
If Green Sombrero is watching tonight, he's having a blast with this.
And this is why we don't take people from Chicago seriously.
Why am I listening to New Yorkers?
We know pizza.
We know pizza here, man. No, I'm nothing against the Chicago pizza, but yeah.
Well, that was the whole Jon Stewart bit. That was genius, right? When he did that thing, it was great.
If anybody wants a cheesesteak, you come talk to me. Just leave it at that.
There you go. There you go. All right, Lewis.
Okay, so much like other people, I was gonna try to be clever, but then I remember two things. One, I'm stupid.
You're not clever.
And number two, the heart wants what the heart wants. So my number one is Museo Rosenbach, Zarathustra. It's undeniable. This is a fucking masterpiece of prog. It's one of the most important records I've ever heard.
Yep.
It never doesn't not make me smile whenever I play it. I always learn something new. It's beautiful. I know some people don't like the idea that the lyrics are not in English. To all of you, I say that just makes me sad for you, because this is a great, great album. Just side one alone is ridiculous. So I would highly recommend you listen to it on YouTube. And you know, if you need a little help, get drunk first so you're not pissed off about the Italian. And then talk to me.
Wait, does anybody want to talk to Rick Eddy?
Say hi to Rick.
Just
Rick,
tell him
we're
hi.
recording. No, he's gone. I was going to put him on the speakerphone. Sorry.
Love to call back in the tease.
I thought maybe it was Anthony calling in with his picks. I forgot to give you my 3 picks.
You know what's strange about Museo Rosenbach? They never did another album.
Yeah.
And even the guys like Pick Karate, the keyboard player, that guy was a monster. He never did anything after that.
But if you're gonna be one and done, be this fucking good.
Yeah.
If it's not the best Italian prog album of the 70s, boy, top 2 or 3,
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
it's a masterpiece.
No, it really is, man.
So
It's an amazing album.
I got to tell you a funny story about it. I was just thinking about it. That particular album.
You
When I
wouldn't
was-
tell stories that the Mets were on.
No, I didn't even. That's true. Yeah, guys, stretch out. Let's. Papa Ken's going to tell you a nice long story about Museo Rosenbach. So actually, that's how I got into CDs, because I was a crazy vinyl collector, and Museo Rosenbach was like this mythical album that I could never afford. And the Japanese put it out on CD. And I said, I could buy the album for $300, or I could buy the CD for $28. So I bought the CD. I didn't even have a CD player. I didn't get a CD player for like another year, and I kept amassing CDs. And finally, the first thing I played was Museo Rosenbach, and I'm gonna shit myself. I mean,
yes,
it's just a stunning album. But that was actually the CD that got me into CD business. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze.
That's it.
And and I started Laser's Edge from there. Really
Great album. Great album.
I got this one in '97. obviously, I think it was
Been reissued many times. Yeah.
This is the 97 one. The album is from 73. Please, folks. Yeah.
I agree.
That and the Semiramis album are two of the best one and done Italian albums of all time. Both
Yep.
fantastic.
Okay.
And two very different records.
Oh yeah, big time. Yep.
Two weird looking album covers.
Yes, indeed. But very memorable, right, Chuck? Maybe not for all the right reasons.
You know, the singer turned up in El Tempio della Clessidre years later, but I don't think he ever did anything in between. Like I said, Pick Karate, the keyboard player, what happened to that guy? I don't know. It's the one album he's on. Didn't play with anybody else as far as I could tell, or anybody else in that band for that matter.
Yeah.
You know, they reformed at some point, played Japan. Nothing.
Not the same.
Not the same.
I will just say, for talking about the weird cover, if you pay close attention to the illustration in the back, you will get a sense of what the hell is going on. There's also hypodermic needles, and there are little men being crushed by the hand. And then in the front, you get the full bukkake of terror that is that image.
Yep.
And I would just recommend people not to drop acid before they listen to this very intently. But it is still an absolute joy.
It is.
It's dark as fuck, but it's great.
Chuck, what do you got for number one?
Oh man, well, I'm going to go out. I'm going to surprise many over here, and so I'm going to pick an album that Lewis had mentioned earlier in the day. Earlier before we got on, Charles Mingus's. This album right here. Let my children hear the music. Utterly an utter masterpiece. It's probably his finest hour amongst all of the great albums that he's made. This album, as far as the compositions go, Charles Mingus is one of the greatest jazz composers, maybe even crossing over into the public eye. And so, but this album over here, you get to hear him as a composer, and all the people that played with him on this album just absolutely just bring this beautiful music to joy. It's in my opinion, once again, just like what Lewis mentioned earlier, I believe that this is his finest hour. It's perhaps his most progressive sounding album. That was going to be my number one. Over all the albums that I have in my honorable mention, that was my number one. Charles Mingus. Let my children hear music is my number one.
Even Mingus agrees with you. That was his favorite record.
And I'm so happy that he made it.
Yeah.
But he's Feigenbaum's favorite. Steve told me he has 61. He owns 61 Mingus albums.
Wow. All right.
That's a lot of Mingus.
I have 34 albums by him.
Mingus for your dingus.
29.
Cool. I just realized I went out of order. George, sorry.
Uh-oh. Poor George, man.
Number one, some a hotbed of progressive music, Tunisia. Talking about Mirath. Progressive metal band, 5 albums. They started life as a Symphony X tribute band, and the first album, and then the second album is still in that vein. But then they switch over a little bit, and they acquire this a reliance on hooks. There's like a commercial slant to what they do. Very well produced stuff, a lot of strings, a lot of ethnic sounds. They're one of the few prog metal bands that actually writes very relatable. There's no epics. It's all 4 or 5 minute tunes, and that really a lot of people can relate to, but they still have the flavors, a little bit of the Symphony X sound, but it's mostly about this Middle Eastern commercial string driven sound that they really perfected, actually. So Mirath.
George, did you catch him at Prague Power?
I didn't.
They were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So
I've seen
didn't they change vocalists along the line?
The keyboardist sings on the first album. They didn't
Right, and he was a good singer.
Yeah.
But then they brought in a singer, and he has a very distinctive style. He sings like I forget what the style is, but it's a Middle Eastern Middle Eastern vocal technique he uses.
Really good band. Their studio albums are pretty damn special.
Production is just something else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really good live as well.
Where do they record at, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't know. That's a good question.
They sing. I'm sorry. They I think they recorded with Brett Lima. I think in
Mhm.
France.
In France, yeah, I kind of figured that, and so because the sound is very nice and polished, and that's a very good album that George picked there. Mhm.
Never heard them. I'm gonna have to buy one.
Oh, you'll like them. You'll like them.
Very good.
Their keyboard player is a great producer himself. He used to produce Adagio and Venturia.
Kevin Codford.
Yeah.
Yeah. I turned down my wrath.
Wow.
Wow. Dumb
This is where you
move.
can't have nice things.
It wasn't my finest moment.
Don't you admit it? Hey, every now and then the good ones get away, right, Ken?
It's happened.
Or they get turned down.
It's happened.
Yep. All right, Eric, number one.
All right, we'll get Chad in front of the TV quick. I gotta go with Mahavishnu. Since we didn't have a Hall of Fame, I've got to go with them as my number one. And that was when we came on, I was like, ugh. I had a 3-2-1, but I had to put him in there since there's no deemed Hall of Fame for M. So I went with Birds of Fire, Mahavishnu Orchestra, number one.
Nice.
That makes me happy.
Chad, what do you got? Number one.
Going Brave next. Just kidding. Again, I got to go with a favorite. Marillion's my number one. Like a lot of their catalog, Brave is my all-time favorite. Can't just, I mean, we've said enough about them over the last year, especially Stephen. But gotta agree with them there. Marillion's my number one.
Cool. Ken, what do you got?
Chad, right now they're introducing Greg Luzinski. What are you worried about?
Really? We go back to 1980. Well, actually, the Bull is there. He owns a barbecue pit in left field.
It does.
Nice.
All right, well, I'm surprised. So my number one, I'm surprised nobody mentioned this band. Band from Czech Republic, Modry Effect.
Yes.
And the band was led by guitar player Radim Hladic, who was an absolutely lethal guitar player. The guy's unbelievable. Modry Effect translates as blues effect. The first album, a little bluesy. Then they hooked up with Jazz Q, the jazz rock band, and they did an album called Continuo, which was more in the jazz rock vein. And then they just went like full on prog. Incredible keyboard work, like laser beam synth solos. You got the Mellotron organ, and Hladic, he's just killing on all the albums over and over. To me, it's especially the later albums, kind of reminds me a little bit of like Finch mixed with Yes. They had an album called Svitani and another one called 33. This band absolutely destroys Modry Effect.
What was
That's
the album you said? Who's the Finch plus Yes?
you could check out their later albums like Svitani. They had one called Svitani, and they had one called, the last album I believe was called 33. Very long, side long tracks, and it's just very intense. A lot of back and forth, guitar and keyboards going back and forth. It's just great. There are vocals, and not in English, if that's a problem for some people. But there's very long instrumental passages, and probably I would say Modry Effect of all the Czech bands, and there were a lot of good Czech bands. Modry Effect was the best. So yeah, and Radim Hladic. He also put out solo albums. Guy was just incredible. So that's my number one.
That's a good choice. I forgot all about them. I have a couple of theirs. I haven't listened to them in a long time. They're really good. Really good.
Yeah, dig them out, man. Dig them out. So yeah, I wanted to go a little bit off the beaten path tonight. So because we had so much stuff.
Yeah. My number one was always going to be the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And whether it's Intermounting Flame or Birds of Fire, I mean, whatever. I mean, it's those two are just absolute drop dead classics. So that's my number one. John McLaughlin, Rick Laird, Billy Cobham, Jan Hammer, and Jerry Goodman. Classic stuff. All right, honorables. Stephen, what do you got?
Well, I've kept it reasonably tight. I mean, I know that M is a really big letter, but I've gone for Moody Blues, Days of Future Past from '67 here. I think they're important because I think they're kind of pioneers of the scene, doing things nobody else was at this stage. This is rock meets orchestra, orchestra meets rock. It's both, it's everything. It's really good. It's Hayward, Lodge, Pinder, Thomas and Edge for the first time. I think the music that we listen to is completely different without this. So really important. I know they're a name that everyone knows.
And they skipped the record company by making that, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. So the other two, I've only gone for another two. I'm going for some more unusual ones. This is Mobius Cat, and this is an album called End of Time from 2010. They're similar in style to something like maybe Iona or Mermaid Kiss, if anyone knows them. But there's strings and there's woodwind that genuinely bring something different here. They've only released 2 albums that I'm aware of, and End of Time from 2010 is the one that I would suggest you start with. And the other band that I've picked up, well, there's 2 CDs here, but there's 3 EPs, all very confusing. This is a band called The Mighty Handful, okay? And these 3 EPs across these 2 discs are the first of 5 of the Sitting in Danny's Car concept story. Okay, so it started in 2013 and then was released almost consecutively after that. And it's a bizarre kind of mix here. When I wrote a review for these guys a long, long time ago, what I described them as was the hard hair 70s prog pop 80s rock. And that's just these EPs. Since then, they've broadened the horizons. There are songs where you think, oh, that's David Bowie. There are songs where you think, is that Elton John? And there are songs where you think, wow, it's hair rock. There's others where you think it's out and out prog. They don't really care. They just go and do what they want to do, which I really like. And the concept on these, because it is a concept thing, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, really. It's about the death of a friend. They meet the Grim Reaper. There's time travel. There's the opportunity to meddle in the past, how that would impact today. It's very theatrical, totally over the top, loads of fun. This is The Mighty Handful, and I think they're one of the best bands that are out there just now that nobody's heard of. And that's me. That's all I've gone for.
Nice.
Bill and Ted's Adventure.
There's an element of that, yes. Yeah, there's an element of that, definitely. Yeah, they are loads of fun. Musically, they're really good, though. They're such a tight band. And the compositions are great. They're really clever at what they do. They can change the tone and the mood and the atmosphere just in a split second without making it sound contrived. Really like them a lot, and nobody's heard of them. So, yeah, The Mighty Handful. Check them out.
Cool. Lewis.
All right, I'm not going to repeat any that have already been mentioned, but there are some I have to mention. This was almost my number one, and I absolutely love this album. This is Material, and the album's called Seven Souls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're not familiar with Bill Laswell, you got to get on it. And this has the vocal talents of none other than William Burroughs, reading poems about the afterlife according to the Egyptians. This is a phenomenal record. Light up a big fatty and listen to this. This was, as you can tell from the state of this jewel box, right? This has been through war and back. But Mastermind Excelsior is, in my opinion, one of the finest moments in Bill Barron's career. Bill Barron's is a personal friend and an unbelievably good guitar player. He now lives in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It is an instrumental album. I believe the only all-instrumental album they did. I love that record. This is, I consider it a very good Italian prog metamorphosis, Inferno. This is really, really good stuff. It's not Museo Rosenbach good, but it's very good.
That's more in like the ELP direction.
Yes. So it's still, you know, if you like your prog, this is going to make you happy, right? And then in the more jazzy, there used to be a Canadian band called Spaced Out. The drummer was Martin Mahieu, and this is a solo record that he put out. And let me try to get rid of the glare just real quick. It's called The Physics of Light. It's a beautiful, beautiful record, all instrumental, of course, but it's just, this man can play the drums, and more importantly, he can compose. So this is a really, really fine album. And two more, we'll be quick because I know that our boy has to put on his Philly Fanatic costume.
Steve Carlton's walking out there right now.
This is Machine and the Synergetic Nuts. This particular album, Leap Second Neutral, is my favorite by them. This is a cuneiform album. For people who don't know what that means, all I can tell you is this is going to cause you to think hard. And that's a good thing. All right, this is a very, very good record. And finally, and this is also a cuneiform record. It's a little bit less complicated, but just as good. Mats Morgan's band. Thanks for flying with us.
Yep.
Absolutely smoking. Mats Morgan is, again, if you're not familiar with his playing, I don't know what to tell you. YouTube is your friend. Please, Steve Feigenbaum sells these records. My man sells some of these other records. Get them. They'll be better than whatever you spend your money on. I promise you that.
George, what we got left?
The duh pick, Mahavishnu. Gotta have him. Started a genre, basically. Also like Lewis, Mirthcon, Avant Prog from Oakland. Really good stuff. And a guy that didn't get called, 14 albums, Tony McAlpine. Really good instrumental stuff.
Yeah.
Great players on most of the records. Really consistent albums. Like the godfather of the shred genre, basically, the guy that really got it going. So McAlpine. That's it.
Cool. Eric.
All right, this one killed me to leave out of my top three. Morgable, thank you, Ken. Myriador from Canada.
Louise.
I had to put these guys in there. I can't say I'd listened to a ton of Marillion recently, but same as Steven, they were kind of outside of the big bands. They were my gateway in. Thank you, George, Fernando Molinari, and someone who I'm really getting into. I'm not there yet, but got to have some Pat Metheny as well.
Yes.
And not Lyle Mays.
Yeah, that one was Pat and Lyle, but
They're both M's. How about that?
That was my point.
both M's, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would say.
I believe I forgot.
Pat Metheny rabbit hole, man. There's like no getting out of it.
Yes,
I went there.
the spot on the shelf keeps growing.
Yes. Yeah. Make some room.
I also forgot Metheny. This is terrible.
I forgot Metheny.
Helps to alphabetize there, Luis.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but you know, that way I try to keep my brain working. Clearly, it's not actually helping, but I try.
Chuck, what do you got left?
Oh man, well, there's a lot of bands that I left. Well, there was a few bands I just wanted, didn't want to repeat myself on. I know that most of what I have here is not going to be repeated. My first honorable mention is The Move, their debut album, more psychedelic than it was progressive on the next three albums. Alphonse Mouzon,
Yes.
Transplant.
That's a great album.
Yeah, that is.
You know, what's up? I keep saying this again, and so we always keep forgetting about how great Phil Manzanera is as a guitarist. He's he's a damn good songwriter, but as a guitarist, he's damn good, man. And then I have to throw this one in there for a good buddy Peter Pardo.
Yes.
Magma Udu Udu. And then, you know, just to make our good buddy and myself happy about this, and so I had to throw this one in there. I know it's going to piss a lot of people off, and so, but once again, Mad Villainy, You know,
Yes.
it's that, like I said, not all progressive rock has to have capes, you know, and Mellotron, that's progressive music right there, especially that album. You know, I dare anyone to tell me that album is not as progressive as anything that's come out recently. The album came out in 2004, and it basically just stunned the world because it was that so much different from everything else at that time. You know, but those are my honorable picks right there.
You know what, Chuck? You're absolutely right. If you don't tell people what the fuck it is, you just make them hear it.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna say, "Hey, what's that? I like that," and then you tell them it can't be.
Very
Then
clever.
the shit happens. That weird thing happens where what they heard is no longer trumping what they think. Right? That's
Exactly.
right.
Mhm.
It's like wine experts. They're all experts until you give them the blindfold, and then they always choose a $3 Chuck. Right? Yeah,
They choose the Welches.
that's right.
And everybody, as always, will have the everybody's picks in the comments section pinned at the top, probably first thing tomorrow morning or later tonight. So, Chad, honorables.
All right, some have been mentioned. I'll run through those real quick, but I have a bunch here. Happy Halloween, Morte Macabre.
Oh, fuck!
I can't believe this didn't come up.
Ah,
Half Lambert, half Anecdote, Mellotron, Doom, just gorgeous, spooky, dark stuff.
Mellotron galore.
Oh God, yeah. Myriador, I went with Avanti. I like their other albums. I just thought the longer form songs in this were kind of cool, a little different for them. Moody Blues, I had to throw them in there. My favorite happens to be Long Distance Voyager. I know it's a little poppier. It was my entry point, has a lot to do with my dad, but I always loved that album. Magma God's it's got to be there somewhere. I went with Ka. It's a little more accessible, a little bit more melodic. Pretty nice album. Lama Sarah, Italian band we mentioned earlier with SEI. I picked Luxad. I could have picked any of them. SEI is another good one. Great Italian band. Luis, I picked the first one, Machine and the Synergetic Nuts. Like Japanese fusion with a nice dose of Avant in there. Eric, you might want to check it out. There is no guitar on the first one, but there's lots of cool sax. There is a guitar player on the second album as a guest, and they only have two, 03 and 06. Both are very cool. Check them out. Max Webster was mentioned. I also went with Million Vacations. Great album, great band. Mastodon Crack the Sky, by far my favorite of theirs. One that was not mentioned from Norway, Moron Police. They're kind of a mix between prog and pop. Good vocals, really good musicianship. There's a song on here called Captain Awkward that blew my mind when I first heard it. Again, looked it up on YouTube, and they've got amazing artwork. Yes, amazing. Yeah. You gotta look that up. Absolutely killer. This one's called A Boat on the Sea. Pretty cool album. And my final one that I had to leave it. This isn't kissing ass, but I had to put Mike Cood in there because I like the damn records. I might not like the bass player, but I like.
He's an asshole. I know.
I love
him well.
No. I love the bass player. I love that guy. Luis Nasser, my friends, good bass player. Mike Cood, look him up. The one I like the best is Would Not. All their albums are good. That's all I got. Go Phillies.
Cool. Ken, what do you got?
All right, my honorable mentions are, relatively speaking, kind of pedestrian. And, I'll go alphabetically. I have a secondary list of about 25. Maybe with permission, I'll post them in a day or two after people have posted in the comments. All right, I'm going to go alphabetically, and you'll know all these. Magenta, I had Magenta here. Pete's favorite band, Magma. We were talking about, again, Mahavishnu Orchestra. Oh, I'm going here. Oh, band, they were going to be in my top 3, and then I switched them out with La Machère de Serre. Manège from Canada.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yep, I like that band. Very classy. Had Phil Manzanera, Diamond Head. Surprised nobody mentioned Matching Mole.
They're my honorables.
I also had Metamorphosis, one of my favorite Italian prog albums. Morgable, my brothers, love these guys. From Canada, Morse Code, made some really great sort of Gentle Giant meets Genesis meets
Mhm.
maybe a little Yes. Great band. And then the last band, Nicholas Barker from Anecdote, his offshoot project called My Brother the Wind.
Ah, yeah.
Psychedelic jam band thing. We did an album, their last album, and maybe we'll do another one someday. And like I said, I got a crazy list of stuff, and that had none of it's been mentioned. And let's see, I'm sure in the comments a lot of it will get covered, and what doesn't, maybe I'll post it.
Cool. All right. A lot of my stuff was already mentioned, so I'm just going to go through and just pick out the ones that have not. All right. So I mentioned Magic Pie before. Great modern Norwegian band. Ken
Which
Mitchell
album?
solo. What's that, Chuck?
Which one?
Which Magic Pie album?
Probably King for a Day.
Yeah, I love that album.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite. Man for Man's Earth Band.
Which Kim Mitchell album?
I love the EP, and I like the first album as well.
EP's
I'm a big
great.
fan of Aural Fixations.
Pete, did you ever hear Man for Man's Chapter 3?
I do not believe so.
That was before the Earth Band. He
Right.
made two albums for Vertigo, and they were kind of like jazz. They were basically
Real
like jazz
jazzy,
rock,
right? Yeah.
jazz
yeah.
rock albums. They're very good. Just check them out.
I'll
They're
do that.
available.
What else from Australia? Master's Apprentice, Moody Blues we covered. Magellan. All right.
Oh,
Yeah, good band. How about a band from Germany, McChurch Sound Room? Really cool, kind of like occult hard rock prog band from the early 70s.
Great cover.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's kind of like that weird kind of skeleton looking thing. Yeah.
Oh, with the dripping wax and
Yep. Yep. Awesome. One and done US band Mirthrander. One and done
Oh.
British kind of supergroup Mogul Thrash, kind of jazzy, kind of proggy. It's got John Wetton in the band.
John Wetton. Yeah.
Yep. Another Norwegian band, Motorpsycho. Kind of like a psychedelic band, modern day band, My Sleeping Karma. And last but not least, got to throw the Swedes out there, Meshuggah.
Yes.
Got to have some Meshuggah. No?
Did you ever see Meshuggah?
Yes, many times.
I saw them with Sean Malone. We went
Really?
to see Meshuggah. Yeah, they were fucking nuts, man.
Oh yeah, that's an assault on your senses, man. When you
And
listen.
they were rolling around on stage. I'm like, what the hell is this?
The building shakes when Meshuggah plays, man. It's
when I saw them, they were much more mellow, but they had a stroboscopic light show.
yeah.
And Tim McCaskey from Mike Cood and Sona Sombra and everybody, my brother from a Michigan mother, he went with me, and he was getting pummeled by the lights. Like you could almost see him getting hit in the face by the strobes. It's one of the biggest regrets of my life. I didn't have a phone with me to film this. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. This guy getting his ass kicked by the light show. It was
the lights
great.
and the deep blues that just like penetrate every fiber of your being. It's a Meshuggah show is relentless, just relentless.
Yeah. And Thomas Hockey, what a drummer.
They were playing like 8-string basses or something.
Oh, yeah.
It was
8-string guitars and 8-string basses. Yeah,
it was just,
it's like it's just all doom, 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 and you're just like, all right.
it was an assault. It
Yeah,
was an
yeah,
assault.
pretty intense, pretty intense. So there you have it, everybody. The letter M. Those are our top threes and our honorable mentions. So, of course, in the comments below, list your favorite bands that start or artists that start with M and any honorable mentions you might like. And come back next week. We'll be deviating from the alphabet for a week. We got kind of a little fun episode to do. The guys don't even know it yet, but I'll be announcing it to them off camera. So everybody go Phillies, right? Or
Go
unless
Phillies.
you're an Astros fan, go Astros. You know,
Go
whatever.
Astros.
Go for it.
I don't
Oh, we
care.
can't say go Mets, can we? Sorry,
Yeah.
Pete. No, that was for Ken. That was for Ken.
Well, I can say go Rangers.
Chuck and Peter just collateral damage in that comment. Sorry.
I know, right? I know. Oh, Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. All together, all the damn
All
time.
the damn
time.
Here on In the Prog Seat. Don't forget tomorrow, new release day. So we got a slew of stuff being covered and reviewed tomorrow. So tune in for that. And for Stephen Reed, Louis Nasser, Chuck Alvarez, Eric Porter, George Lemie, Ken Golden, and Chad Hutchinson, and the Philly Fanatic, I'm Pete Pardo. We'll see you all next week on In the Prog Seat. Take care.